It's about this. We create community, use challenge as the catalyst.
The trust breeds magic.
We're going to connect on the same level.
Possibility is bigger than they imagine.
Like any experiment, the reason you do it is to learn.
Who would you be without opportunity?
The learnings of this experiment are going to be on the edge of what's possible.
Everybody!
I can do this, and it's worth doing.
This became a love for us, this place.
I wish I was as nice as he says I am, but I just want to say this place is so full of love. I was really impressed by that last speaker. It's great. I've got a couple of stories to tell before I start the slideshow, but I'm going to do it manually, and I'm going to put up the first picture because that's me, full of hope. By 1944, during World War II, during that time, we were running under beds when they had the blackouts. It was a frightening time, but I had such an up spirit as opposed to my brother who was kind of depressed. And so I grew up with this great energy, and I knew things were going to happen for me. I'd not necessarily be successful financially, but I would probably have a good life. I watched my parents not working out so well. And at the age of 3, 4, 5, I knew I was in charge of this family. It was fascinating. But before I get into the actual stories, I want to just say, I've done a lot of these talks, and you start to think that you're something special, but I'm not. It's just I love my work, I love my friends, and you're going to see a lot of them on the screen, but I just have to tell you a funny thing that happened to me. This summer, I was invited to do one of my talks, and it's in Martha's Vineyard, and I know Libby knows about Martha's Vineyard. There's a hospital there. It's brand new. It's very, very valuable, beautiful hospital, and they gave me the honor, because we live there part of the year, my wife and I, to decorate the hallway, the main hallway, down like 100 yards, and off to the right and a little to the left with my photographs. And it's an honor that I had never expected. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before. I've had pictures in museums and things like that. But this was quite an honor, and I get a phone call after the pictures are up and said, Guy, do us a favor and go speak to Windermere at the hospital. And I go, of course I will. I'd be happy to. So I arrive at Windermere not knowing what to expect. And it turns out it's the old age home for antique people, probably in their 90s, and they're all in wheelchairs, and all the men are dead. It's just the women left. And there's a sea of 25 wheelchairs with women bent over like that. And I'm going, oh my God, what am I in for here? This is crazy. And I said, do you folks know the Rolling Stones or the Doors? Not a word, not a hand up, nothing. I'm going, well, of course they're 90 years old. But I said, do you know Rita Hayworth? Yeah, a couple of hands went up, like that. I said, I'm in for big trouble. So I say to the nurse, let's go. We'll go into the into the hospital, and I'll talk about the pictures as we go down the lane. And the nurse says, no, we can't do that because we don't have 25 people to push these wheelchairs, so you're going to have to explain the pictures to them verbally. And I'm not sure that they understand what I'm saying anyway. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm in such trouble here, but I'm going to go to my Zen place, my Buddhist place, and I'm going to learn something from this experience. So I start talking, explaining about my life in Hollywood, growing up with all the movie stars and all of that. And 5 minutes in, I hear a little voice go, it's too long. I'm going, oh my God. I haven't even talked about one picture yet. And so please don't do that, by the way, if I go too long. Okay? But then 5 minutes more, I'm just going to introduce my first idea of what photograph I should tell them about. A blue background or whatever. But I hear, I gotta pee. And another one gets taken out to go pee. The first one's now coming back after the too long business, and I just wanted to share with you that it was the most wonderful humiliation and a learning experience. And I'm filled with love, and that is true. And that's why I love this experience here at this place. The Do lectures are so inspiring. So that's me in the beginning, and I'm going to tell one other story, but I'm going to put up another picture so you don't get bored. That's me during my rock and roll years. That was for real fro. That's not a wig. And if I let my hair grow now, I'd probably do the same thing. And so in those days, we actually used light meters. You don't see too many of them now anymore unless in the film business. But this one story I wanted to tell you is how I got involved with photography. I'll try to make it short because I want to show you a lot of pictures. But I had no interest in being a photographer. I was at a Quaker college and had to go into the Army, into 6 months special services because of my Quaker background. And I wasn't going to kill anybody. And I wrote that down, and they thought I was gay, of course, because I refused to kill anybody. This is the Times, by the way, it's 1960. So I get into the Army, and my friend, who was a mafia son, had it all set up for us so that we had to do nothing. We went in, we lived in Carmel, we drove in at 9 o'clock, and that's the way my life was. It was blessed, and I didn't have to shine my shoes, it was done for me. And all the work that we had to do in the Army was easy. No KP, weekend passes every weekend, all bought and paid for by his mafia father. So they first say to me, okay, Guy, what do you want to do in the Army? Because you're not going to kill anybody, obviously. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, what have you got? And they said, well, Christmas is coming. Would you like to decorate Christmas trees? Because they saw my art background in my college transcripts. And I go, I would love to do that. And they gave me 6 whacks. You all know what a whack is? Okay, that's the female army. And to work with me, and we went and bought hundreds of trees, brought them down to Central California at Fort Ord, and I decorated Christmas trees for 2 weeks. And then Christmas came and it's over, and they come to me and they go, you did a great job. What do you want to do now? You got 3 months left. I said, well, what do you got? And they said, do you know anything about photography? And that sounded great. I go, yeah, I know everything about photography. And yeah, what do you got? And they said, well, you run the dark room and teach the new recruits how to take pictures and how to develop film and develop their prints. So, I could lie my way into anything in those days. I grew up in Beverly Hills. It's part of the culture. So, we used to drink when we were 14 at bars, with a phony ID. In those days, you could get away with anything. So I get into the darkroom after I had read 3 books the night before from the Fort library. I go, I love this. This is great. You mix some chemicals here, you mix a chemical there. You have your developer, your stop, and your hypo, and the wash, and you hang things up, and they're drying, and it's done. And I had such a great time. And so my first weekend home, a friend of mine who was a famous producer in Hollywood said, so Guy, why don't you take a camera with you and take some pictures? And I did. Took one roll of film because I didn't realize you could do 1 picture or 10 pictures of the same thing. I figured as an artist, I would just shoot that one thing when it was right, when the light was right, or the bird landed, or the boat was leaving. And so I shot 36 pictures, got out of the Army. I had no money. My family were wealthy. And I said to my dad, I know you want me to go to Yale, but I'm not going. I'm going to go to art school and study photography. And he said, well, you're on your own, son, and kind of kicked me out of the house in the sweetest way. I knew they loved me, but they weren't going to help me get into something that they thought was distasteful to them. And so I had a mafia girlfriend. I call her up and I say, okay, I have no money to go to school. I have no cameras. And this school, that's the best photo school in the country, wants me. And I go, can you help me? And she says, are you kidding? She drives home and in a Fossil Vega. Okay, you know what that is? The great car from Italy. In ermines, this is what she used to wear. This is no joke. Goes to her father, says, Guy needs some cameras. He says, give him anything you want. Okay, I love Guy. He's great. Give him the cameras. I got the cameras, went to school, started taking pictures of children, of dogs, anything to make $50 to pay for the tuition. That's it. That's how I got into photography. I was so in love that I worked 7 days a week till late hours at night in my $50 apartment in Beverly Hills. That shows you how old I am, okay? Because now that $50 apartment is $5,000. Okay, so I'm playing like tennis with a friend of mine. He's Doris Day's son, and he was my next door neighbor. And he said, look, there's this girl I want to date, and I know you're a photographer in school. Would you possibly want to do the album cover? He's a producer, by the way. Terry Melchi's famous producer. And because we were schoolmates, I go, yeah, sure, I'd love to do it. I don't know anything about it because I'm doing fine art photography, but I'm sure I could do it. So here I was, my first year as an art student. I'm sorry there's a fly flying around here. But anyway, we shot it, and Columbia Records loved it. And they go, God, we want to give this guy more work. He's 20 years old, and he's in California. We've got a lot of talent in California. And so that was my first thing. Then I went back to my schooling. And so I was playing basketball with a friend of mine named Lou Adler, who some of you may know. There's a lot of young people here, so you may not know all of us because we're all in our 70s. But Lou said to me, I hear you're a photographer. And I said, yeah, I've got my photos in the car. You want to see them? He goes, yeah, I'd love to see them. I said, well, I'm starting a company. It's called Dunhill Records. We have no money. We don't have money for the first cover. But we want you to come and work and be the art director, photographer. And I'm going, for no money? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know, I didn't care. It just sounded fun. So I took Barry Maguire to the backyard in Beverly Hills, lifted that plate up, of a manhole, and put him down in there. And that sort of suggested something dangerous or whatever. And we couldn't afford a colored cover, so we shot it in black and white, and it went to #1 in the country. Do you know the song? Does anybody know Eve of Destruction? Anybody over 40 here? Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. Right. It was gigantic, and it was the beginning of the anti-war songs. Okay. So all of a sudden, I had some cred. I had a #1 album, and I'm a young kid still in school. I soon quit school because I shot this album cover, which is one of the most iconic albums in the history of the music business. Let me tell you about it. I was with Lou at Dunhill, and this group walks in, and they're gonna sing for us, and they sing "California Dreaming" a cappella and "Monday Monday" a cappella, and we look at each other and go, "Oh my God, this is gold! It just walked in to our place. I mean, these guys are going to be gigantic." So Lou said, "Go live with them, go hang out, and get an iconic picture." And so I sort of move in with them for a couple of days, and they don't want to do anything. They're all stoned, right? So I go, well, let's go upstairs and talk about what we could do as a photograph. And so they lit a bowl in the center of the room, closed all the windows and the shades. And this was a little tiny house in Topanga Canyon. And I've never been so high in my life. I could not move. This was the bathroom next to the room where we were talking and smoking. So I'm sorry, kids, because I don't espouse this, all right? But I got stoned on a contact high, and what happened was, if you look at their faces, I don't know if you can see it close up, these people are gone. And look, this is John Phillips, the songwriter, the leader of the group. There's some terrible trouble with he and his wife later. But anyway, this went to #1 in the country. It was one of the biggest sellers of the year. I got nominated for things for it. And by the way, that little thing, I was going to use my red pointer, but I'll just show you. This right here, including California Dreaming, we had to stick over the toilet that was in the picture because I was so naive, I didn't know that you couldn't have a toilet on the cover of anything public. It was a very constricted period. And so we put that sticker on the outside of the cover. So when you took the shrink wrap off, there was the toilet so people could actually see it. So that's how we got around it. But that picture made me instantly famous. And I never stopped working for 55 years. And I'm still working today at 74. Okay, this one we did later on. That's the Mamas and Papas. It's a famous photograph. I sell a lot of these through the galleries, and I brought one today to donate in case somebody would like to buy one during the auction. and it'll be signed and it's verified. But this was at night, and it's very hard to shoot at night with 35 millimeter. And it was in John and Michelle's pool. Do you all know who these people are, by the way? Yeah, okay, good. So I said to them, this is great because I've got you all together. This will probably be the last time we'll ever all work together because I was familiar with the strife that was going on. Here's what happens in music business. Some of you may know this, that the one who has the publishing and does the songwriting makes all the money. The singers, the other two who don't, make 1/10 of what the others are making. And they thought of themselves as a family. So they were very upset, Denny and Cass, that they were making like slave money while these two were living in a Bel Air mansion and they were collecting all this money. And I said, you know, it's going to break you guys up unless you split this. Because I know I grew up in the music business, so I know all about the business. And I said, you should think about it. So anyway, that one became very famous too. I did 9 covers for them over the 8-year period that they were together. Okay, so I get a call from Columbia because they were very happy with my picture of the guys with the girl on the beach with the surfboard. And they said, would you shoot, I think they were called Ben and Jerry originally, but Simon and Garfunkel, they're in London. And I go, sure, I'd be glad to. I don't know their music, but they said, I'll send you it. And I played Sounds of Silence, still one of the greatest songs ever in rock and roll history. And so these guys come over to my house, and I'm talking with them, and they're erudite, sophisticated, highly educated people. Paul Simon is a Dickensian scholar, and we're talking about Dickens. And I said, well, you know, my father owns all the Dickens first folios, all the first editions. And so you should talk to my father because that's what he does. That's his hobby. He buys these books. And so Paul said, well, after we shoot, let's go over there. So we shot this in the woods in Beverly Hills. A lot of people don't know where this is. There is actually wooded hills in Beverly Hills. You'd never know how to get there. It's a little tiny gate, and it's a dirt path. And you can go, and we're walking down the road, and I saw this picture. Everybody looks good. The scarves, they're almost British with the colors that they're wearing on neck scarves. And we chose that for the cover. And I think that's the only one I have of them. But I remained friends with Art Garfunkel through the years. And when they broke up, Art was never told that they were broken up. My friend Harry Giddis, who was a film producer, and myself, at my house, Art was staying with me at my house in Beverly Hills. And we had to say to Art, listen, you guys aren't working together anymore. What? I said, well, look, Paul's a jerk. There's no doubt about it. We call him the little general, and he was not particularly a nice man in those years, and he wanted to go solo. He'd make all the money. He didn't want to split it, and he was writing the songs. So I understood it. It goes back to that same thing. If you don't split things, you're going to end up, it's the same in any business, by the way, if one person's making more than the other. So, oh yeah, I included this one because that's my favorite picture of them. Are there any photographers, professionals in here? Raise your hand. Because people ask me, how do I get that effect? Well, you spit on the lens. And then you wipe it clean, of course, afterwards. But I love that picture. And I've done tons of pictures of them, and I love those guys. And I love their music. I'm going to get through here in 25 minutes, you'll see. Okay, Bob Dylan. Columbia called me, asked me to shoot Bob Dylan. And it's funny they put the name there, my secretary, because I think you know who that is. Yeah. But in case I forget, she knows I'm old and I might forget. But Bob Dylan is one of the things that changed my life. I have to tell you a quick backstory. How are we doing on time, by the way? Okay, yeah. So I have to tell you a backstory. I was in love with Bob Dylan. Before I was a photographer, I was into social reform. I was a left-wing activist. I had worked for Adlai Stevenson when I was young. And Bob Dylan spoke to me through his songs. And I started telling everybody in Hollywood about this guy, Bob Dylan, Bobby Zimmerman. Anyway, loved him. He changed my life. He made me even more political than I was. And these Masters of War, one of the great songs, and times they are changing, all those things. So I love that picture of him because he's actually smiling. Somebody was asking him a question, and it was a stupid question. And he hated stupid questions, like what's your favorite color? One of those things. So he's smiling because he's going to give this guy a rip. He's going to go through him. So I caught it just at that moment. But the other thing, I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to waste time. But get into it. Okay. Well, I, at that same time, learned about Buddhism, and it stuck with me. I listened to tapes of Alan Watts talking about Buddhism, and I was an atheist, and I still am, but I'm a Buddhist atheist. And the first time something actually made sense to me, if you ever listen to Alan Watts, and it's all about love. Everybody's been talking about it here. It's the key to everything. I stopped working for money. I took something in the desert, and when I was through and I got back, I said, I will never work for money again. I'm going to work for love. And that happened, and luckily I fell in love with a wonderful woman who is on the same track, and you'll meet her all later. But anyway, that's Bob Dylan. Those are the things that changed my life. And there's many more. But okay, the Byrds. This guy here, Gene Clark, there, had an affair with Michelle Phillips, broke up the group completely. All right, and that's what happens. There's a lot of sex in those days, but I mean really inordinate amount, because it was the 60s and there was free love everywhere, and there were these love-ins. You've all heard about them, but I've been to a ton of love-ins, and no, but I was taking pictures, okay? Yeah. But anyway, this was a great group, and I was kind of influential in giving them a Bob Dylan song, not turn, but I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, and they asked me to photograph their cover, and I did, and it went to one in the country again. Everything I was doing was going one in the country. And at this time, people in the show business, the movie world, were interested in me coming and doing photographs of their stars. And I'm going, well, maybe, but I'm so deep into this stuff here. So, but the reason I put this one in is I'm driving down Sunset one day to my studio, and I look up and there's a billboard of this picture, 150 feet long. And I'm going, oh my God, I didn't know what I've done. This was the first rock and roll billboard on Sunset. And I was proud but scared. I mean, who am I to have that billboard that size? Anyway, more and more billboards kept coming. And it was a period of like 5 or 6 years where rock and roll billboards were essential to sell albums. So I was really thrilled about that. And I also was nominated for a Grammy for the cover, which was a lovely cover. But I'm going to get off them and get on to the Rolling Stones, because my dream at this time was to work with the Rolling Stones. They were a blues band, and I didn't tell you, but my childhood, I'm going to tell you this story. God damn it. Okay. My father gave me one thing in my life. One thing. He gave me a crystal set. I was 8 years old. And some of you may not know what a crystal set is, but you wire copper wire, and you have a little crystal, you put an aerial on the roof, and you put some headphones, and you listen to music on the radio. Now, I'm 8 years old. I can't get anything on there except this one station. It's a race station. Race station means it's a black-only station. And I'm going, God, I love this. This is incredible music. And I'm 8, 10, 11, 12 listening to this music in my bed, and I fell in love with the blues. So big in the blues. And I know all about the blues. Now, if you ever want to talk about it afterwards, I'm happy to do it. And I have one regret in my life, is that I didn't photograph blues singers and songwriters. But that's a whole nother story. Anyway, this first guy here is Jones, Brian Jones, who was a blues man like me. We were the same age. He was in England. I was in California. Once we got together, we go, oh my God, instant friend. But the rest of the group, they liked the blues, but they were not blues people like Brian. When Brian died in the swimming pool a couple of years later, the band veered away from the blues, wrote their own things, great songs. But when I first fell in love with the Stones, they were primarily a blues band. And if you listen to their first albums, first 2 or 3 albums, I've done 4 albums for them, but they were all blues. And then after this one, by the way, big hits, High Tide and Green Grass. We put that in there, you know why? To make people think, well, green grass, what does that mean? It meant nothing, but people had some idea of what it might mean. Okay. Okay, my first photograph of Mick, we were kids, I'm like 21, he's 19. We had a great time. I'm working on their book. They're coming out with a book very soon about the history of the Stones, 50 years with the Stones. So this will be in one of them. And I've got about 10 pictures in there. And I love that picture. It's so sensitive and beautiful. And that weird little jacket that he's wearing. And I love that. Anyway, so let's see what else we have. Oh, yeah, we've got Keith. Now this is before the drugs. So this is a warning to all of you drug users. Look at how beautiful he was, and look at him today. If you've ever seen what he looks like, he's gaunt and sickly, he's half dead. So that's a cautionary tale. But wonderful guy, brilliant songwriter. The Stones in group, that's been at the Annenberg Center for Photography in Los Angeles and around the world in different shows, lately in New Zealand, and was in Brooklyn. Did you go see it? No, the rock and roll show? Okay. The Beach Boys. I had a great fondness for the Beach Boys, even though they've all turned out to be Republicans, and I'm kind of shocked. I really am. But I'm still friends with them. I can still talk to them, and we don't talk politics. That's our mantra. But I shot that in the tent where everybody used to think big thoughts. It's a Moroccan tent in the middle of his living room. And as you probably know, he had a sandbox with a piano in the sandbox so he could be barefoot in the sand while he's writing these great songs about the beach and that world. And Brian and I hit it off, but after this, the drugs took in. They were psychotropics because he was very sickly. His father had hit him in the head with a 2x4 when he was young. He was deaf in one ear. A lot of people don't know this. But so he had to fight to write this music. And I watched him create these wonderful songs. I was there when they recorded Good Vibrations. What an honor to be there for that momentous time. But they're all there, and their dog up top. And many of these guys remained friends. 2 of them have died, and Dennis and Carl, and they were both really sweethearts, good friends. And this is Brian in the water, because that was the last I saw him before he became ill. And we were in his pool. I have some great shots of him diving off the board and all of that. He was pretty healthy at that time, and we traveled a lot together. We've gone to Boston, Florida, Hawaii, and I used to teach the surfer stomp on stage. This is no joke, because that was the dance of the time. So they'd always bring me up on stage, and I'd be doing my surfer stomp, that kind of thing, and with my cameras, and so much fun. And I learned about rock and roll on the road with those guys because they were all a little sick, and so we had, just to give an idea, different ambulances taking different ones to the venue because my back is out, I'm not feeling well. It was like they were all prima donnas and they could try to outdo each other with diseases and sicknesses. And that was the way it was. And we traveled, and there were women, of course. Okay, this one, I was never fond of their music, never have been, but I actually got to know them quite well. That's Cher looking down on Sonny, and I did that afterwards for this museum show because I felt she still loves Sonny, of course. Sonny made her famous. Sonny was a street guy, he was tough and interesting, and Cher was Cher Lapierre, her name was, and she was like an Armenian street girl, like hippie of the 60s, and he liked her look and taught her to sing and wrote songs for her. I Got You, Babe, and things like that. So I wanted to put that in there. By the way, all these people, strangely enough, became really good friends. It was a small community in the music business, and we all knew each other. We went to the same clubs, and we promoted each other. And that's Carole King. And Carole was really a dear person. She grew up and sang and wrote songs in the Brill Building. Lou Adler, the Brill Building was where all the songwriters in New York went to work and write songs. Neil Diamond, people like that. So she was writing songs there, and Lou Adler of Dunhill said, "Come on out, Carole, I want to record you." And she said, "Oh, I can't sing. And well, she had the #1 album in the country, of course, right? So it was fascinating, and she became very wealthy, and now she's an activist, sweetheart. She's an activist in the environment. Some fly is following me. I don't know what it is. Okay, Judy Collins. This was a famous album cover. Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell's great song. She sang it, made a hit out of it. And everybody loved her. Judy Blue Eyes, the great song by Crosby, Stills and Nash, was written for her. And I just put her out in the field, and then I diffused it for the cover. So it's kind of magical, but I wanted you to see what she looks like. We all know Janis Joplin. This is honestly, without exaggeration, 10 minutes before she became famous. I'm backstage with her at the Monterey Pop Festival. I was the art director and photographer for the festival, which changed all of our lives, that festival. And she's backstage with her dog. I don't know if you can see it in there. And we're talking, and 10 minutes later, she goes on and sings, some of her great songs, like Down on Me, that one, or Down on You. Well, I forget which one it is. But anyway, she went out there, and the whole audience was blown away. And I saw Columbia Records executives get up with a signing pad, honest to God, and go sign her at that minute. And she became famous. Everybody in the music business knew who Janis Joplin was. By the way, this will all be in my book next year. You can get it in more detail. And then I'm trying to include my friends, people that I cared about. And so this is Nico. She was in the Velvet Underground. And when I photographed this cover for her, I had known her from the Fellini films, where she was just a stand-in usually in the Fellini films because he loved her look. She was German and gorgeous and a poet and a singer-songwriter. And this album became iconic. Andy Warhol loved it, and he blew this up 8 feet and put it in his studio. So I was very honored, and I liked Andy. He was quite a character. I owned a magazine like his in Los Angeles called Wet Magazine with 2 of my friends, and he had Interview. So we had a mutual friendship, and he loved this picture, and I do too. It's one of my favorite pictures. To point out the lips here, the reason I use this for the cover, her lips are amphetamine lips. They're completely cracked and dried out. And that's not how she died. She died of other things, but she was not well, ever. As a matter of fact, I have a great story because I'm living in Menorca, Spain, and I'm sitting at this bar called the American Bar, and it's a foggy morning. The whole place is fogged, and I see one figure coming out of the fog early in the morning in a black cape coat. And it's Nico. And I go, "Nico, what are you doing here?" She says, "Guy, have you got anything? Are you holding?" I go, "Nico, this is Spain. You don't dare do anything here. It's 6 years automatic in jail." And she said, "See you later," and she was gone into the mist. And that was the last time I saw her. Okay, here's a good friend of mine, Jim Morrison. We were actually at UCLA together, studying philosophy. And I didn't know the other 3, but he walked in with long hair. And both of us, when we were at UCLA, had fairly short hair because there was a code then at colleges that you had to be trim. So he walks in with long hair wearing a very unattractive shirt. And I said, "Jim, you're a beautiful guy. Take off the shirt." So I'm the one who made him take off the shirt in all the pictures. And I said, "I want to shoot you sort of like Jesus, and I'm going to do what I do later." And this was my choice for the cover. I had a second choice, which I didn't bring today, but that became one of the most famous covers in rock and roll, The Doors, that's all it said. And what a great group. I'm still friends with two of them that are alive. And this is Jim's, I did this for his book cover, The Life of Jim Morrison. And that was, I think it was on Penguin. But I wanted you to see that I was working for an Italian Renaissance feeling of this beautiful Adonis. And he was a brilliant guy, and unfortunately, he believed all the press about him. It's very dangerous. Okay, this is the whole group. Prophetic because I shot it in a cemetery, which, if I didn't know better, kind of looks like grapes, but out here. But no, it's not. And can you see what I'm talking about in the background? Yeah. But look at the great clothes. This was all changing right that year. People were like in Nehru clothes, like, you know. But the two guys, John Densmore, who he and I became great friends and tennis buddies. And I mean, I love these outfits. Love them. And so they all had their own personalities, each one of these guys. By the way, Light My Fire was not written by Jim. It was written by Robbie Krieger, the far guy on the right. Okay, another one of my friends that got lost so quickly. A brilliant, funny, charming guy, left-handed guitarist, as you can see. I don't know. One of the great sadnesses, because I was at two of his shows, and he wanted me on stage with him, so I got to go on stage. But at the show, at the Hollywood Bowl, he was so charismatic and thrilled everybody. The whole music business came out to see Jimi Hendrix. He was the god of the guitar, still is today. Again, Columbia Records asked me to shoot Barbara, and they gave me permission to be on stage with her for her first performance at the Hollywood Bowl. And, you know, I'm never on stage. That's not where I work. I work in my studio. But I wanted to get a great picture of her. And she had sung this song that most of you probably don't know, but Happy Days Are Here Again. Does anyone know that? Anyway, she made it famous. And I heard that on the radio. And I go, oh, my God, what a talent, this girl. And I've photographed her a few times since then. But I loved her and still do today. So an integral part of my life was Dean Martin. He and I were tennis buddies. I played tennis there at his house. He got me my first motorcycle when I was a kid. And that's called The Drinking Man's Diet, the book he's reading, in case you don't know. But he was not an alcoholic. He took Percodan, but his drink was apple juice with ice in it on stage, and he would do that thing, you know, I don't drink anymore, but I don't drink any less. And that was his big joke. But anyway, I loved him. And what he did for me, nobody had ever given me anything in my life. He gave me a brand new Bonneville motorcycle as a gift. So what a man. Okay. Dennis Hopper. We were friends that touched our lives together periodically. And I was working on a movie with him. And I think I just showed you, yeah, I showed you the nice one. Because he was wild during these days. And I wasn't. I was very sober this period. I had 3 kids. I was a grown-up, and I wasn't abusing anything. And he was still abusive and dangerous. And anyway, enough of that. But when he died, he had one of the great art collections in the history of Hollywood. Unbelievable. He was so talented. Great artist, great photographer. Jenna Rollins, just loved her. Just one of the greats. I put it in there because I didn't become friends with her. She's one of the people I did not become friends with because she lived with Cassavetes, the director, and they had a very private little cabal of people. And I knew some of the people in there, but I was not invited into it. They were all dark, brooding, interesting people, like Peter Falk was one of them. And I liked them all, but I was never, maybe I was too young to be part of that group, but I liked them. And I loved her. I love her as an actress. Okay, one of the seminal friends in my life is Jack. I worked with him a lot. I've done 4 or 5 major shootings with him. I put this one in because it's sexy And he would give you so much when you took pictures of him. How am I doing? Okay, in time? 5 minutes? Wind it up. Okay. I'm going to wind it up. But that's Jack, and meant a lot to me because he got me a lot of jobs. He was very fond of my work. Okay, Jane Fonda, another. I grew up with her. That was for a film. They shoot horses, don't they? Liza grew up the street from me, and we remained friends until she moved to New York. There's so many stories I could tell about Liza, but I'm going to quit. Natalie, one of my really close friends, because my first wife and I double dated with her a lot. She was very troubled, very sensitive, and needed a man to protect her. And that's what she was always searching for. And that's about that. But okay. Peggy Lipton, one of my best friends. When I told my first wife that she was one of my best friends, Peggy was never invited to my house again. Raquel Welch lived down the street from me. Wonderful woman, tough, interesting. I have so many stories about her, but that's for another time. Oh yeah, James Coburn, he and I became really good friends, and he posed for that for Cosmopolitan because we had to do a semi-nude, and we remained friends till he died. Didn't see much of him because I moved up to Ojai with Leon, my wife. And okay, you all know Sean Connery, and then one of my best friends, Malcolm McDowell. Mary Steenburgen was truly like my sister. It still is today, one of our best friends. And her husband, Ted Danson, is truly my best friend of my life. He's the nicest man I've ever known, the most sentient being, philanthropic. That's me and Leon when I first got started with my second half of the life after I quit being an asshole. And that's me today. I ride motorcycles. Motorcycles are truly my life. I have 50 motorcycles. I used to have 300. And I collect them, and it's a serious business. But I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to run over and do all that.